Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm joined by Joyce Ng. Joyce, we have a lot of little things to talk about. It seems a little bit of a lull in the week, I would say, between the Oscars and now like guilds and stuff coming next week.
This is why phase 2 is boring.
It's a little slow right now. We
had a week and a half of drama, and I guess still percolating from Andrea Riseborough.
Yes, this week we had, we're recording this on Wednesday. On Tuesday, the Hollywood Reporter published an open letter basically from Gina Prince-Bythewood about the Andrea Riseborough row and what happened there and how...
Although she never names it, or her, the movie or Andrea,
No, and how it was not really, how even calling the snub of the Woman King a snub is not really accurate because it was just completely blanked and obviously completely ignored by the Academy. And while she doesn't mention it, many other groups also ignored it, like the Critics' Choice Awards and the Golden Globes, seemingly. But the
Academy, you mean from Best Picture, because it did get nominations,
right,
in other categories.
Yes,
but
for Best Picture,
it was completely blanked at the Oscars.
Yes,
it was more about just the systemic racism in general of the industry and just the awards ecosystem.
Correct. Let me see if I can find. I don't have it up, Joyce. How bad is that?
Already? Wow, you're so unprepared.
So already unprepared. She says this award season was an eye opener, and talks about how she was doing a lot of people would come up to her, Academy members, being like, "I didn't really want to watch your movie, and then I'm glad I did," that kind of thing, and how kind of that hurt every single time she heard it. And she mentions Till, obviously, and St. Omer as well as being blanked by the Oscars. You know, I mean, the one part I think I saw a lot of people pointing out was about the social capital. So we talked about this last week, about how we're talking about a lot. The Andrea Riseborough conversation is about a lot of different things, certainly, and how a lot of Andrea Riseborough's famous friends helped her get an Oscar nomination, basically. But Viola Davis and Danielle Deadwyler had backings of multi-million-dollar studios, presumably, to help support their campaigns. Gina Prince-Bythewood says, "My issue with what happened is how people in the industry use their social capital, screenings in their homes, personal calls, personal emails, personal connections, elevated status. People like to say, well, Viola and Danielle had studios behind them, but we just very clearly saw that social capital is more valuable than that. The type of power is exercised in more casual ways in social circles, where folks are your friends or your acquaintances. There may be diversity on your sets, but not in your lives. And Black women in this industry, we don't have that power. There is no groundswell from privileged people with enormous social capital to get behind Black women. There never has been." That's Gina Prince-Bythewood.
I mean, I would say the most damning sentence in there is, there may be diversity on your sets, but not in your lives.
Yeah.
So I don't like the overall sentiment of that is not wrong at all. And I agree with a lot of it. But I would say, you know, the social capital part of it all, it's not just exclusive to Andrea Riseborough. Like we talked about last week, like everyone does this behind the scenes. It's never been done on such an aggressive level as the To Leslie campaign, right?
Or in such a visible level, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it was so public, but we all know this kind of whisper campaigning and stumping for your friends and emailings and like screenings in your homes, like that type of stuff has always been done in Oscars history, campaigning. Like hers is not the first quote unquote grassroots campaign. It was just, they were so intense about it and in such a concentrated period of time.
Right.
Yeah. But I also thought it was interesting when she pointed out how you know, people have said, like, you know, Till and Woman King obviously had campaigns of like studios behind them, like they had money, and Momentum Pictures, like we've said, had no money, and that's why they did this. But I think like the thing she doesn't talk about is how I don't think their teams, in this case, like the Till team and the Woman King team, would have even thought about spearheading a campaign built on social capital like To Leslie did, because they did have money, so they wouldn't be thinking about it, right? It's like necessity is the mother of invention, right? You know?
Right.
And then also, I think what a lot of people have not talked about is that, like, as people of color, you don't really think about stepping out of line when you're trying to play by the rules. And they were obviously trying to play by the rules that everyone, not just them, but just all the studios and everyone has always played by, you know, like this is how you campaign. And there are these vague rules, and you could do these like behind the scenes, like campaigning tactics that no one really talks about. And that's all like gonna find like you, like this is how you play the game. And like, this is not their first rodeo, like, but that's just like how it is, because you don't want to step out of line.
Mm-hmm.
And like seem difficult. It's kind of like, you know, when you're a woman and you could say the most nonchalant thing in the most neutral tone, but people, men usually will think you're a bitch or you're difficult because they disagree with you. It's like that, like for people of color sometimes, like you just want to fit in, like when you're a kid in school, you just want to fit in and, you know, stay in line. So you might be less inclined to think of something like this. And like white people are privileged because like they don't, you know, run the risk of having blowback like that, you know?
Right. I think that's really fair. I think people last week when we talked about this were like, Joyce, I read the comments sometimes, which I know is a mistake and a huge mistake, obviously. But some people were like, oh, we were kind of like, they felt that we were maybe downplaying, or I saw somebody use the term gaslighting because we were saying it's not a big deal and everybody does it. But I do think it is not a big deal and everybody does it. I think the difference is, like you're saying, it wasn't technically illegal. I don't think anything that happened here, but it is so visible and so nonchalant about being visible that was unique to Andrea Riseborough and the people who were doing this, right? Because like you're saying, like I don't think a person of color would even think to or would even risk doing that, right? At the, like you're saying about like getting in trouble, then even if it's skirting the rules or like coming very
because you already know the system is built against you,
right?
So you don't want to do anything more that would disadvantage your position when you're already like starting way behind white people, basically.
Right. And
you know, it's like this is the type of stuff you have to think about, and like the minefields you kind of have to navigate that white people don't really.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, I also think like, it's a part of the conversation is there's so many different aspects. We kind of said this last week too. There's so many different aspects of this. Like we were talking before this about Malcolm X, how Daniel Shiner got into it because he said in the Criterion Closet that Malcolm X
got into it just on Twitter, basically. This is not a thing. This is not.
But Malcolm X is his favorite crime movie, and people were like pressed and unhappy with that. The description of Malcolm X. I rewatched Malcolm X last night, actually, just because I have it on Criterion 4K Blu-ray.
Did you do it because of
I got it for Christmas, and I've been meaning to watch it. And I had time last night, but I knew that he had talked about it, obviously, or mentioned it in the Criterion Closet. And at the beginning of the movie is like a crime movie.
The first act, it's like, built, it's structured like a crime film. It's not entirely a crime film, but there are elements of it in there.
But the reason I brought it up is because I was watching it and I'm like, that movie is an incredible movie, like just such a great movie. It only got 2 Oscar nominations, Denzel and Ruth Carter for costumes. Just an absolute travesty, right, for the Academy to not have that get multiple nominations. Certainly, I could see like 10 or 11 if I was just sitting there ticking them off. It's so good. And I think that's a conversation. And like we were saying, like these movies here, I don't think, this is not to besmirch The Woman King, a movie I really like, but it's not as good as something like Malcolm X. Nor does it need to be, right? Or whatever. But I think there's like levels of the conversation here. And like you said, it kind of just all came together. Like Till, I don't think is as successful as Malcolm X, certainly. But obviously.
No, but it's also like, if you think, Malcolm X is a GOAT movie, it's also like, if you're not white, it's like you almost have to scale higher levels to get that kind of recognition. Like you can't pass with just mediocre stuff like white people. Like there's so much mediocre movies.
Well, to Leslie, not to besmirch it, right, is a little bit mediocre.
It's totally fine.
It's totally fine. Totally fine movie. A totally fine performance. And it's fine. It's just totally fine. But again, it maybe gets the leg up, like we're saying, because of like the privilege and the campaigning. And I still don't think anything they did was against the rules. And I don't
No, it's not. If you think the To Leslie campaign broke any rules, that's because all the quote unquote rules that the Academy has laid out, their guidelines for campaigning, they were already obliterated a long time ago, chewed up, spit out, and buried like 162 feet deep, right? Like it was just, they were all the stuff that they did openly on social media was stuff that was going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Anyway, there was like that, I think it was in THR or Variety. I think it was THR, like a lot of anonymous members weighing in on this thing. And most of them, like, I think it was like 9 out of 10. I don't know if it was 10, but it was like 90% based. And most of them were just like, who cares? Like, this happens all the time. Like,
Right.
they didn't do anything that doesn't already happen. So
it does feel like, so I think that is definitely part of the conversation. I think the rest of it, like we've said, is it's just many different conversations all came together. And like you said right when we started, phase 2 is a little slow. There's not much to talk about. So it's like this is like a great kind of like just sitting there as a talking point, because now that it's over,
I am glad that Gina spoke out about this, because she should. Because like we talked about last week too, there were signs that before the Oscar nominations that The Woman King, despite its success, was weak. Like, it missed SAG Ensemble, it missed PGA. It should have easily gone both of those things.
Yes, at the end, and there's obviously conversations within The Woman King, like you said, the idea that genre movies are not taken as seriously, right? Obviously, it's at least in the conversation, if not like a major part of it. But like it missed all these guilds. Like PGA, how did it not get into PGA? How did The Whale get into PGA over The Woman King? That's like a complete. That's just nuts to me.
They really had what, 4 sequels, right?
I mean, you know, I just think that's it. Obviously, it was a successful movie. We talked about it a lot. We really enjoyed it. I think it's a good movie. I'm still waiting for it to be on Netflix. My conspiracy is that
it's coming to Netflix in what, 10 days? Next week?
Yeah. I think next week finally. But I'm like, man,
it sucks because I feel like it will do well on Netflix. Yes. So it sucks that it does not have a single Oscar nomination.
Well, it's also like, again, and this is like a conspiracy, and I'm sure that has nothing to do with this, but I was just like, it felt like it should have been on it much earlier. It came out mid-September. It should have been on like last month, maybe not right during voting, but like certainly like last month. And that it's still not on there. I'm just like, man, that sucks.
Well, Gina mentioned something in there about like how they were hoping to have like a VOD sales or something, right?
I don't remember.
Some line in there. She was talking about like all the success and like, she said we're going to pass 100 million at the global box office, which is groundbreaking. Historic sales on VOD and DVD are great. So I think I don't know, I guess that's also the risk, like when you're just kind of holding out on the streaming in hopes that like you'll get the nominations, and then if you don't, then it's just kind of like, oh, that's, you know.
I just feel like we saw this with Babylon too, honestly, which came out like right after on VOD, I guess, on January 31st, I guess. And I feel like everyone was sharing memes and tweets and like, oh man, Babylon's great. People are going to really be like, I can't believe we slept on Babylon. That was like every single tweet I saw basically was like that. And I feel like Woman King, it's going to have the same kind of thing when it's on Netflix. And it'll be like the #1 movie on Netflix for like 2 weeks. That's not like an original or whatever. If Prisoners was like the #1 movie on Netflix for like a couple of weeks, like certainly the Woman King would be. And people are going to be like sharing tweets and memes from it, and it's going to be like West Side Story style all over again, where it's like, man, we really slept on this really good movie.
The West Side, I mean, at least West Side Story got nominations, but yeah, right. That was like, they waited so long. They should have dumped that, not dumped, but like they should have put that on Disney Plus during voting, but they waited until March 2nd last year.
Joyce, you told me this earlier, so I pulled it up. Viola Davis posted about the Gina Prince-Bythewood editorial, and she wrote, allyship equals active support for the rights of marginalized group without being a member of it. This is what's missing. Whether it be a, quote, grassroots campaign spearheaded by peers or multi-million industry dollars backing one, we rarely are the benefactors, which I think was probably a typo for beneficiaries, maybe.
Yeah, when I read that last night, I was like, wince. I was like, you mean beneficiaries?
Yeah, not typing on your phone though. I mean, I don't speak.
I know, and maybe her social media person posted it, and I know, but I was like, benefactor is the person who gives the money.
Right.
Beneficiary is the person who profits from it. So
if you see my work, you also have to see our plight and either contribute to it or hinder it. I stand in solidarity with Gina Prince-Bythewood and all artists of color who continue to work, create, thrive despite our environment. I will hope always. Viola rules. EGOT winner, Viola Davis.
EGOT, she missed the Oscar nomination, but she got her Grammy this weekend. So,
I mean, I think Viola's going to do fine. She's got a TV show coming.
She was always going to be fine whether or not she got the nomination. I think it's more for, because she has the stature already, right? Now she's an EGOT winner. It's more like someone like Danielle could have really benefited, a beneficiary from an Oscar nomination,
Well, we'll see this. So this weekend, we're talking about like all these like phase 2 things. On Monday is the Oscars luncheon, which I think will be interesting.
We're going to have a whole new spate of headlines because, Andrea will be there.
Presumably will be there.
Likely be there. I think it'll make more headlines if she were not there.
I already saw at least one person suggesting it's weird that she's not at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, at least on the schedule. Though at the same time, the Santa Barbara International Film Festival seemingly is trying to chase Oscar clout, so scheduling out all these.
Well, they announced like these film festivals like this in Palm Springs. They announced the recipients months in advance. I remember getting these emails in like October.
Correct. So seemingly not like can't really pivot when you have a shocking out of nowhere Oscar nomination for Andrea Riseborough, but presumably she'll be at the thing. I mean, I'll be curious to see, because like we said last week, it's like even watching the movie, I was underwhelmed because I was just expecting something so great. And I think there's like an added pressure on this movie that's like a small indie movie that now, if you watch it now in the hindsight of like the Oscar nomination, you're like, I don't know, it seems okay, right? Like, it's
I mean, I don't think they were ever pushing the movie itself as a whole as a thing. It was always about Andrea and her performance. Like, I think they always knew that. So I don't know if they really I don't know if they expect you to think the movie is amazing. I don't know. Like,
I'll just be curious. Like, I don't know if I feel bad is the right phrase for this, but I'm just like, I'll be curious to see how because she has not really said a thing, and she's been the subject of just how many million headlines, right? And all this conversation without even having weighed in. And yeah, I don't know what her reaction will be. I'm assuming she'll be there and, like you said, have to be asked by it, right? Or if like there's reporters at this luncheon, so they'll probably talk about it or talk to other people about it. And it just seems like, what is that going to be like? I'll be curious to see. She hasn't really done a lot of interviews, Joyce.
No, she basically did what, every nominee does the day of the nominations. They just do the reaction interviews, and then that was that.
Right. And that was before this kind of really got into the cultural discourse
before the investigation started.
Right. So I'll be curious to see what that's like. But Santa Barbara, Joyce, a lot of our favorite Oscar frontrunners are going to be there. Angela Bassett will get the
Please read the names of these awards, because I love Angela Bassett. They always make me laugh.
Angela Bassett is getting the Montecito Award, which is named after one of the most beautiful and stylish areas in Santa Barbara, recognizing an individual who gave the performance of their career in film this past year.
That was a very stylish performance, just like Montecito. I've been to Montecito, so yeah.
The performance of their career in film this past year. So it's their best performance of their career from the last year, not necessarily their whole career based on that wording. Because I would say, as much as Angela Bassett is great in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which I rewatched, Joyce, and she is quite solid, even if she's only in it for like 25 minutes, basically. Not that. I
mean, that is like a totally fine screen time for a supporting performance.
Totally fine. And she's got like 3 scenes, like you said, and like they're all good. But she's so much like Malcolm X. I was like, man, she's rules of Malcolm X. It would have been great to get her.
She should have a lot more nominations. Yes. Like Waiting to Exhale. Yeah. She should be a winner already. Well, I was thinking about this, obviously because of Kate and Michelle in Best Actress, and just how like, man, this is just like terrible timing, because they should both be winners in different years, and how it was kind of like that with Angela and What's Love Got to Do with It, like just being unlucky to go up against Holly Hunter in The Piano that year. And if they had just released What's Love Got to Do with It a year later, when Best Actress was completely dead. We talked about this in Oscars Playback. Like, she would have easily won. No offense to Jessica Lange. So no.
Cate Blanchett getting the Outstanding Performer of the Year award, which, I mean, that one was pretty straightforward. Yeah. So let's see who else. Jamie Lee Curtis has the Malton Modern Master Award.
Yeah, that's always my favorite name of an award here, just for the alliteration alone.
So Jamie Lee is out there in the campaign trail too, Joy. She did an interview with Vanity Fair, a very emotional interview, talking about how she thought of her. She was so psyched to get this nomination and really wanted it, and like kind of like went for it. Mentioned For Your Consideration by Christopher Guest, her husband, as part of it. Talked about her family and stuff. Left tearing up in the interview. I love when I read interviews and it says tears up in brackets, because like you're reading it, even though I think it was.
It's always. I also love when you like us as the journalists have to indicate that in the copy. It's funny.
Laughs. brackets.
Laughs.
So Jamie Lee will be there. This award was created in honor an individual who has enriched our culture through accomplishments in the motion picture industry. The award was named in honor of longtime SBIFF moderator and renowned film critic Leonard Maltin. Hard to argue that Jamie Lee Curtis has not enriched culture. She's one of the most iconic actresses of the last 50 years, thanks to Halloween, True Lies, and I guess Everything Everywhere All at Once, her Oscar nomination.
Yeah, no, they've given this to a lot. I think they gave it to Ben for Argo.
Hell yeah, they did.
Yeah. So Ben, who had such a great time at the Grammys. So
can't wait till we do our Oscars 2024 episode and I get to just stump for air for like 45 minutes because it's going to be the best movie in the world, and Viola Oscar incoming for that next year.
I mean, I already have a story. I mean, I could tell it in 6 weeks, but I have a take on her performance in that movie already. So I have not seen that movie.
I can't wait. Viola Oscar incoming. The American Riviera Award going to Brendan Fraser, Joyce, who was on Howard Stern this week and made headlines for saying the Golden Globes.
So many breakout stories from that interview.
A lot of them, but the Golden Globes one got a lot of buzz. They needed me more than I needed them. And where's the lie, basically? Certainly.
Yeah, and then he called it a hood ornament.
He called the award
but
itself.
But he was very happy for Austin Butler.
He was very happy for Austin Butler, but also like he doesn't care about these awards.
No.
And he said, here's what he said. I found myself wondering, is this a cynical nomination? I couldn't really tell because of my history with them and that I still have yet to see the results from their reformation. We are still awaiting that, to tell you the truth. But then he praised them for having Zelensky on, which I know the Oscars failed to do. And Sean Penn was going to smelt his Oscars, Joyce. I don't know if he ever smelted them.
He gave him one of his Oscars.
He gave him one rather than smelt. But did he smelt the other one?
I don't know. No, he said like he could give it back to him one day, right? That's what he said when he gave it to him. I guess. Right?
I mean, maybe then
I could be completely making.
He might be smelting it when he gets it back, I guess. So that's Brendan. This award, the American Riviera Award, recognizes actors who have made a significant contribution to American cinema. Again.
I mean, The Mummy, obviously, and George of the Jungle, classics.
Then the Virtuosos Award is an honor created to recognize a select group of talent whose noteworthy performances in film have elevated them into the national cinematic dialogue. And
this one had like 8 recipients.
So here are the nominees or the winners of this and who will be there to discuss their work. Austin Butler, Best Actor nominee for Elvis. Kerry Condon, Best Supporting Actress for The Banshees of Inisherin. Daniel Deadweiler will be there for Till. Nina Haas for Tar. Stephanie Sue, an Oscar nominee for Everything Everywhere. Jeremy Pope for The Inspection. Hugh Kwan for Everything Everywhere. And our boy Jeremy Strong for Armageddon Time. Wish that one. I'm still waiting for that to get to Peacock, Joyce.
Focus really went all in on this for him.
Peacock win for Jeremy Strong. Jeremy Strong, a future Oscar nominee next year for Maestro, I assume, Joyce, as he's a supporting actor contender for Bradley Cooper's epic. And then
what I just realized?
What?
Like right this second.
What?
When you said Maestro.
What?
If Cate Blanchett wins this year, next year Lydia Tarr can give the Oscar to Leonard Bernstein.
That's pretty good. And Bradley get that makeup Oscar since he so wrongfully lost to Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody. And then they're giving out an Outstanding Directors of the Year award, really covering their bases here. The Daniels, Todd Field, and Martin McDonough win this.
I mean, yeah, sure, all Oscar nominees. Did you skip the Cinema Vanguard Award?
That's last on my list here. Cinema Vanguard Award. Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson win that. The Cinema Vanguard Award recognizes actors who have forged their own paths, taking artistic risks and making a significant and unique contribution to film.
It's funny that they're getting this since this is their second film together.
So that's great. So we'll see a lot of headlines this weekend, I'd imagine, about this Andrew Riseborough stuff too. I think. I mean, like, what do you think? It's definitely going to come up. I feel like.
When they're not all this weekend. It's over like a week. So
that's true.
Like some of the stuff is.
I think the Virtuosos one is next week. I mean, this weekend is only. Well, Friday is the Cate Blanchett one. Thursday is we're recording this again on Wednesday. So tomorrow or today, if you're watching this, is the Angela Bassett one. And then Cate Blanchett on February 10th. Saturday, February 11th is the Jamie Lee Curtis one. Tuesday, February 14th for Valentine's Day is Brendan Fraser. Virtuosos are on February 15th. The Daniels and the other directors on the 17th. the Cinema Vanguard on the 16th. So there you go. It goes for a long time.
Yeah, so we'll have more headlines next week.
Luncheon and this, that's a lot of juice there, Joyce.
Listen, you go to where's the luncheon at is that the Hilton? No, it's not the Hilton, but somewhere in LA, and they just go up to Santa Barbara. So
Joyce, we were talking about this too. A lot of the guilds are coming up. We've really ignored this part of it, I feel like, so far.
Well, there's a ton of guilds, but we haven't. I think the only one we really discussed in depth was SAG.
Yes.
So we didn't really talk about like DGA or PGA, which are coming up
so
next week. So DGA is the 18th.
Yes.
And then BAFTA is the next day.
Right.
And then PGA is the 25th. And then the next day is SAG.
Right. So DGA, why don't we do that one, Joyce? The nominees were the Daniels for Everything Everywhere, Joseph Kosinski for Top Gun, Todd Field for Tar, Martin McDonagh for The Banshees of Inisherin, and Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans. We could go through the rest of them too, first time and stuff, but that's the film director category. I still have Spielberg winning. Is that wild?
Probably. Is he first in the odds?
In the odds he is, with the Daniels close behind, but I don't know. I still think Spielberg could win. I mean, this is like I was talking about. This is like, I think we were talking about this, and I was talking about. I mean, Everything Everywhere could really win like 4 or 5 Oscars very easily, all above the line. So,
yeah, I don't know if the Steven predictions are hope dictions or just because he won the Globe, which also feels like 75 years ago.
I mean, I'll speak for me and say it's a hope diction at this point. I don't think the Globe really matters. Like we said, I think the only reason the Globes matter is those early, and same with the Critics' Choice Awards. I think they're in the same boat for me, where it's like the only thing that really matters is the speeches from those awards or the perception that you won something. And if your speech is like incredibly compelling and you're on the cusp of being a front runner, that could help push you over the top. Steven Spielberg's speech I thought was really great at the Golden Globes, but it didn't really move the needle, I don't think, at all. And, I don't think it really matters. And it kind of got overshadowed, I think, later by the Critics' Choice Awards, where the Daniels were giving a bunch of different speeches, it felt like. So, I don't know.
Including one at their table, because they didn't announce original screenplay during the broadcast.
So I'm hope dicting them, but I think I would not be surprised if the Daniels won, though. I still have a sneaking suspicion that Todd Field could be a big factor in this race, and it has not materialized at all. But what if like Todd Field?
I can actually. So it's funny because I can see Todd winning the Oscar without winning anything else, but I can't see Steven doing that.
Same, but what if Todd Field wins at BAFTA?
I think he can. I don't even know who I have at BAFTA. I don't know if I have.
I just think that it's like this year, just for whatever reason, and especially because the Daniels, I think, are, at least in my eyes, like the front runner for screenplay over Banshees. It just feels like this is like one of those years, like it's like an Argo. Like I just think it's like an Argo year, even though they're nominated for director, where it's like there's not a real need to have it match picture and director this year, and I just wonder. Or even like last year, I guess, would be a better comp. But I'm like, I just think there's not a ton of passion for them as directors as much as there is for the movie and them as writers. That's at least my fantasy. I don't know if that's true.
I don't even know if like there's passion for them necessarily as writers. I think the passion is really for the movie in general and the cast. Right. And obviously they're the brains behind the operation here because they wrote and directed it. But I don't know. But no, I agree. I don't think anyone is kind of like hyping up any of their directing aesthetic necessarily. Right. You talk about like the editing more too, because it's the most editing. And obviously it's the most original script. So they could definitely win in that vein too. But yeah, it's not like Banshees is a more writerly movie. I don't even think Tar is a writerly movie, but it's such a character study.
It just is, and it's also definitely like the most, like having rewatched it, it does feel like the most directed. I think if you're thinking of like whatever you think of the word directing is, I just feel like it's very directed. It is like very specific, even more so than like Everything Everywhere, which, like you said, I think the other elements are more of the most. I don't know. I just don't. I could see like Tar winning literally nothing, because I think there's a world where like Kate doesn't win Best Actress, and it just goes over 6 and that would be fine. And people will be like, okay, great. Like, it doesn't really matter. But I could really see him winning Best Director. I don't know. I'm not ready to predict it. And I guess I don't know what
Well,
really to do with
he
DGA.
won over the weekend was also the London Critics.
Yes.
And Tar did really well. It won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actress.
Right.
So
London critics aren't voting for Oscars.
no, but they're kind of like indicative like of what like BAFTA might do. Like they have kind of like the similar vibe.
I mean, I
So-
do think Todd could win BAFTA. I really do. And I think if he wins BAFTA, I think you go into the Oscars with like him versus the Daniels, basically, and Spielberg in a distant third. And then we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, because like I've said before, even if Steven wins DGA, I would not be confident in picking him for the Oscar either. Like it's
Right.
not, I don't even know what would make me confident in predicting him. I think like he would need, like I don't think I would believe it unless like he actually won. I'm like, oh, he actually won the Oscar.
Because there's really no other way for him to make up ground in theory, right?
He just has
Because
DGA. Like
he just
he's
has DGA.
obviously is not a BAFTA. Didn't even
Correct.
make the long list.
Right.
I'm
not going to put him at the, I don't know. I'll put the Daniels in first at DGA, but I'm just like, I think Todd Field could really win. I guess, I don't know if that's true, but.
Well, because like I don't even know how far to go back. Because I feel like we've kind of had just really solid directing frontrunners, even though, like Sam Mendes ended up losing in the end, the Oscar, but like Jane last year swept, Chloe swept.
Right.
Like Sam took off from the Globes 1917.
But I guess
Alfonso swept.
Sam never felt like, it didn't feel like a surprise to me when he lost Best Director at the Oscars.
No, because like Parasite was like the beloved movie.
Correct.
Right? But like and yeah, Damien, I guess it's AGI for Birdman because it was really Boyhood up until the guilds, and then it just flipped and the industry went wild for Birdman.
Right. Here's a category I wish the Oscars would actually have: first time director. Wouldn't it be great? Such a good category. So this year the nominees at the DGA, Joyce, or Charlotte Wells, Alice Diop, John Patton Ford for Emily the Criminal, Audrey Diwan for Happening, and Antonetta Alamet Kuzijanovic for Murina. And I have Charlotte Wells winning.
Yeah, so I don't know. Nothing really else to say.
I mean, I think there's a case for John Patton Ford because people really do seem to love Emily the Criminal, and it's a movie that I feel like Emily the Criminal is a little bit like To Leslie in that it was at South by Southwest, I believe, and did not really make a big splash, but then it was added to Netflix, and it feels like I saw just a lot of people paying attention to it after it hit Netflix. That plus like Audrey Plaza in The White Lotus kind of like helped it regain some kind of cultural prominence.
Yeah, but I think like After Sun is just
certainly
too far ahead here. Like I don't think this, I mean, like remember when Bradley lost 4 stars for? But I think that's more of them just like not loving A Star Is Born than anything else. Like last year, like Maggie Gyllenhaal won. Who was 2 years ago? Was it? It was Darius Martyr.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Maggie Gyllenhaal and Charlotte Wells winning back-to-back for vacation movies with Paul Mescal. Probably,
there you go.
Probably
that's the key to winning first time director.
Definitely different tones, I would say, but like still both pretty good movies. For documentary directing, Joyce, this one I find I don't know what the nominees are: All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Fire of Love, All the Breeze, Navalny, and Retrograde. I have Laura Portress for All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, but I'm not convinced.
I think I probably do too. I don't know. I'm assuming that's in first.
It is in first, and then Fire of Love is in second with Sarah Dosa. I could see that winning. They're putting on a full court press for it, I feel like. I get an email about it almost every day. So I still think Navalny could win at the Oscars.
Yeah.
The DJ also does TV, Joyce.
I mean, we don't need to do TV unless you really want to.
No, not really, I guess. Though I really have to update my picks. There's just not really doing a great job here with these. So
We can do TV when we make our final predictions in 2 weeks.
next week we have to do it, right? And then
yeah, next week. Yeah.
And then
it's President's Weekend. Yeah.
Right. We could do makeup and hairstyles. You want to do that? That's this weekend. You want to look at that one?
I don't even know if I've done that one. So
well, there's a lot of categories.
For a lot of these minor ones, I do them like the day before because there's just so many.
A lot of categories. But just the nominees there for edification. Contemporary makeup, the nominees were Batman, Everything Everywhere, Nope, The Menu, and Spirited. Feels like the Batman would be a front runner there. For period character makeup, the nominees were Elvis, Blonde, Babylon, Till, and Amsterdam. Got Elvis up top, I feel like, at least in our odds.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, Batman, Elvis.
For special effects makeup, Whale, Batman, Black Panther, Elvis, and Matilda. So I have the Whale up there.
That's the Whale.
Yeah. Though I'll be curious to see if it loses there. I mean, I don't know if it's a lock to win at the Oscars, but I'll be curious to see if the Batman wins there and what that means. Contemporary hairstyling was the nominees are Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Everything Everywhere, The Batman, Glass Onion, and The Menu.
I would do Black Panther for that.
Certainly. How close do you think the Batman was to a Best Picture nomination? Based on all the guilt.
No.
I think it was probably top 15, though. What do you think?
I mean, Michael Giacchino couldn't even make the short list for score.
I feel like that was a weird branch, not appreciating Michael Giacchino more than like the strength of the movie. I don't know. Film period character hairstyling. Blonde, Elvis, Babylon, Amsterdam, and The Woman King. Blonde is first in our odds, but I'm like, really?
No, I can see Blonde winning. I mean, she goes through a lot of periods, no pun intended.
Wow.
That I don't even know, like
5 people who watch.
I mean, you've seen Babylon more than I have. Like, I don't.
I interviewed the hair and makeup people from Babylon.
So you have to predict that.
Well, I would, obviously. They did a lot of. It was interesting because they did a lot of work to make it not look like the typical 1920s look. So they gave like Margot Robbie like long hair.
Yes, I've heard that was their talking point.
It's a good talking point. It looks great. I don't know. I would let them. I would pick them, but I'm a Babylon stan to the end, Joyce.
I mean, Elvis had a lot of wigs.
There's certainly a lot of makeup on Colonel Tom. And then the other one that will have happen before we record next is Visual Effects Society.
Avatar.
So you'll be shocked to know Avatar is in first in our odds for effects-driven film. The other nominees were Top Gun, Batman, Jurassic World, and Fantastic Beasts, a movie that exists. It's a real movie.
I've never seen any of the Fantastic Beasts films.
You're not missing.
Am I missing out? I don't really think so.
I don't think so either. Supporting effects. This is an interesting one, I guess, for like added, the supporting effects. But 13 Lives, I believe, is in first in this one.
That makes sense.
The Gray Man, The Pale Blue Eye, The Fablemans, Death on the Nile, and I Want to Dance with Somebody. That is a category.
Yeah, it's very eclectic, but 13 Lives.
And then animation film makes it in here for effects, and it's Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Turning Red, Strange World, The Sea Beast, The Bad Guys, and Mad God. Seems like a Pinocchio's sweep there.
Not to derail this from visual effects, but I was talking to my friend the other day because we have not seen Puss in Boots, but like we just love everything about it. Like even before it came out and was a smash. And so the other day it passed or it dethroned Avatar atop of the UK box office or something. So we were talking about that. And then she was like, what if it actually wins the Oscar?
I mean, it could. It's definitely not out of the question, I wouldn't say, but it just feels like
I feel like they don't really think about that category too hard. So I think that's why it still favors Pinocchio.
certainly seems that way. I won't pick it, but I have it in second, I believe, at the Oscars for now. Joyce, we could do some emails here before we sign. This would be a sign off almost because we're running out of things to talk about. Like we said, it's like a little bit of a lull week, but I got a lot of emails.
I can't believe you did not sign off before reading them again.
So you could email us at slugfest@goldderby.com. And here's one from Darren. Hi, Chris and Joyce. You've answered a question of mine before, so I considered going under an alias this time. But then I decided that I like the idea of becoming a recurring character on your most excellent podcast. Plus, I really do want your opinion on this Oscars question. Thank you, Darren. This one's about Meryl Streep. Just recently, you reminded us that she's the GOAT acting vote getter with those 21 nominations thus far. My question, do you think Meryl is done as far as her constant racking up of nominations goes? Did that huge tally happen not only because she's great, but also because there was some Meryl-friendly profile of the Oscar voting body that just doesn't exist anymore? Is Kate the new Meryl? Is Viola, well, except for this year, the new Meryl? And is there any new Meryl, or are all the Meryls done? Longtime listener, you two are the very best. No joke. That's Darren. And he had a little asterisk here. A reminder that Meryl couldn't get an Oscar nomination for The River Wild, The Woman King comp, but did get an Oscar nomination for Ironweed, my Andrea Riseborough into Leslie comp. Joyce, I'll let you answer this one because I feel like you have a much greater grasp of the Meryl history.
Meryl's
yes.
Blackjack nominations. I think this is her longest gap without a nomination, because she went, I think, 5 years in the 90s without one. And I think that was like because of her family and just like raising her kids.
So I could read them off. 79. This is the Oscar ceremony, not the year of the movie. So 79, 80, 82, 83, 84, 86, 88, 89, 91, 96.
There you go.
99, 2000, 2003, 2007. So that's another 4 years. 2009, 2010, 2012, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018. So now we're up to 23. This is definitely the longest since the 90s. Yes.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Does she have anything this year? Like she had Don't Look Up last year, but it wasn't like she was really in serious consideration for that. Oh my God, remember Let Them All Talk?
So her nominees here, the last one I believe was for The Post. Mary Poppins Returns, right?
No, The Post.
The Post, she didn't get nominated for Mary Poppins. Okay. So Mary Poppins Returns. Then she was in The Laundromat, Little Women, The Prom, which she's actually great in, Let Them All Talk, Don't Look Up, and then her next big gambit is Only Murders in the Building to get her an Emmy, I guess. And then after that,
that's what she's doing right now.
And then she's also got another TV show, I think it's called Extrapolations, which is an Apple TV show.
Yeah, that's an anthology, so it's not.
And she has no other movies listed at the moment.
So maybe she's just going for Emmys right now. But no, I don't think she's done racking up nominations. I think she's just in another lull right now. Right. I think she can easily come back with just another like Oscar friendly vehicle.
I think while I understand his question is like the makeup of the Oscar voting body has definitely changed, right? For the better in theory. I still think everyone loves Meryl. And if she did have like something that was like significant, people would just be like, yes, Meryl, like check it off.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if the idea of like, we've certainly, I think maybe I'll give you the credit for coining it, but the Meryl filler nomination that we have like talked about many times, I wonder if we're going to see those as much anymore, because like this year, like for like he's saying, like Darren is saying here, I mean, that Viola Woman King nomination, all respect to the Woman King, would have been a quote unquote filler nomination for Viola, right? She's not going to win. She's probably like in the 4th place. Same like Olivia Colman for like Empire of Light this year would have been like a filler nomination for her. right? Just like not going to win, just check her off, kind of like throw her in the list. And I wonder now, because there's so many more, it feels like there's so many more movies, certainly, or many more contenders, or maybe more attention on all these different things, that maybe we're not going to have as many filler nominations. And I think you see that now, like maybe this year is like a prime example of that, right? Because you could have had, like, it's very easy to imagine this year playing out where both Olivia Colman and Viola Davis are nominated for Oscars for movies that are not like in their top performance level, and like that they would not win for, kind of like Meryl so many times before. But that didn't happen because we had Andrea Riseborough and Anna de Armas making it in somehow.
Well, I think so. With this year too, I think the thing with Andrea's campaign was that it offered people like an exciting new option, right? Because they had never heard of this movie before, and then they were just getting inundated with emails from Mary McCormick. So they're like, fine, I'll like check it out, right? So then I think, and it happened, you know, they struck while the iron was hot, like right in the middle of voting, right when voting started. So I think that was exciting to these, you know, their fellow actors who were maybe just kind of like dulled from seeing the same names and faces from the past couple months, right? And maybe they weren't like, none of those performances were their favorite, or maybe they were their favorite, but then it's kind of like recency bias. It's like, oh, I just watched To Leslie and like Andrea was great. But we've also said like this year for Best Actress has been or was like really competitive,
right?
And
so like we could still see filler nominations.
Last year was not. So I think if Meryl like had the post last year, she could have got it in.
Sure. Okay, I guess that's true.
So I think it's just kind of, you know, every year is different. Again, it's all about timing. Like she was a filler nomination for Florence Foster Jenkins.
She was.
You know, it's
many of her nominations were filler nominations, like we talked about. One True Thing, a great movie, right? Wasn't she a filler nomination for that? I think
it's well? Like, yeah, a lot of these, like she got in, and it's like you knew she was not winning, even if it was like a top tier performance. Like Devil Wears Prada, I would give her the Oscar for that, but we knew Helen Mirren was winning,
of course. So who's the new Meryl then, Joyce? Do you think any of these actresses are, or is Meryl the new Meryl? Meryl's always the Meryl.
Meryl is still the Meryl, I think. I mean, so Cate Blanchett is on her 8th nomination right now. So if she wins, obviously it'll be her 3rd. So she'll get to number 3 quicker than Meryl did, right? So I think we would need to, I'll like, for me personally, I would need someone to hit double digits first before we really start talking about it.
Another Meryl, yeah. I think that's
so she's at 8. Kate Winslet is at 7, and she has Lee this year, so she could be back next year with number 8.
What about
she also had a hefty break in between nominations before Steve Jobs. So
what about Annette Bening, Joyce? Possible nominee this year or next year for her movie.
I feel like she's had several films recently where it seems like maybe she'll get another nomination.
Diane Feinstein in The Report, remember? Didn't happen.
And then it's like Film Stars Always Die in Liverpool. Yeah. She got a BAFTA nomination.
Remember fondly? This year, I think her movie is Nyad, I believe, which is Netflix.
Yeah, I think early, or even last year, people thought that was going to be this year.
It was. I think maybe they were still working on it. I think that was like the rumor that it was, but
another Killers of the Flower Moon situation.
Yes. Here's another email, Joyce. Again, you can email us at slugfest@goldderby.com. Here is an email from Sebastian, who writes, "Hi, Joyce and Chris. First, I want to say I love your Slugfest discussions about the current state of award season. I'm always looking forward to the new episode. So highly entertaining. You both are a great duo. I love it. More gassing us up, so that's fine. I also want to give a shout out to everyone at Gold Derby and the work they do. The interviews are always about the craft and not about the gossip." So there you go. Here's his question, Sebastian. What do you think? Should the Academy reduce the nominees for Best Picture back to 5? I actually think it would be better because it's more exclusive. I have the feeling now with 10 slots, everything can get Best Picture almost. What is your opinion on that? Joyce?
Sebastian and I are on the same wavelength. I am always about restricting things. I agree. It should be about the exclusivity, and there's other like, I understand why it's a bad thing, especially when there's a lot of gatekeeping involved and just, as you said, like systemic racism, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think if you're, ostensibly trying to award the best, it should be exclusive. And it should not be a participation thing. And like the more slots you add, stuff like it just kind of dilutes the product.
I'm going to take the opposite side, Joyce. I think we should stick with 10. I've been thinking about this. And I also think we should up to 10 all the acting categories.
No,
and here's why.
It's exactly how I feel about gender neutral categories. Do them fine, but it should be 5. It should not be 10.
Here's why I think. And I think the problem isn't just that there's too many. And I understand what you're saying, but I do think the problem is also, this is like, this guy, again, I kind of goofed on this, but Mia Goth being like, I can't believe they don't respect genre. But I really think that if they increase the number of categories, increase the number in the categories to 10 and to 5 to 10, if you did that for the acting, even, you have to consider like the full scope of like filmmaking, and they should actually figure out a way. I don't know how you could do it with the current Academy makeup, and even as they have diversified and like more international, like globalized the Academy and all these different things, it certainly has not helped this aspect of it. But you have to consider more variety of movies, right? Like, I just think that the way we are so focused on these quote unquote awards movies, you end up like kind of really boxing out a lot of really compelling performances and movies that maybe haven't been thought of in that way. So I guess
I don't I don't think like that's, I think you're trying to give them, I understand what you're saying, but I think you're also giving them too much credit, because we've seen what had been happening with the unlimited ballot at the Emmys. Like, they just watched like 4 shows and they just nominated like 10 people from the same show. And like this year they're killing it. They're going back to restricted ballots. So it's forcing you to actually pick your favorite. Like, you might not list 10 actors from the same show anymore, because you only have like 6 slots now in that category. So you're gonna, be more diligent in picking your favorite, and maybe think more about which performances you actually love, instead of just being like, I love the show in general, and I'm gonna like check off like the 4th lead who was like fine, but I just love the show. But I think part of the problem also is that everything is just so online now, and there's so much publicity and coverage around award season that you can't like help but be sort of subconsciously influenced by what you see and read. And obviously, a lot of these campaigns start really early on, because certain films sound like an Oscar movie. Like Killers of the Flower Moon, not even out this year, but like last year this time, everyone was just like, oh my god, like Scorsese versus Spielberg, right?
We did that, yes.
Yeah, like we're guilty of it, but it's like you already have like certain films and people on your radar, and that's because of their pedigree, which is fine. But that's why I also love when films like Everything Everywhere, that had absolutely no Oscar aspirations when it was made. So it's great to see films like that actually break through, and it could actually win Best Picture, right?
Right.
Because it's organic. But then I think what would actually help is my dream award system, where everything, like all the voting is done in secret, so no one can copy off of each other.
Yes.
I think I mentioned this last year.
You did.
So like, I want it to be like everyone get like every group, like from the Oscars to like every critic, all the 3 million critics groups, everyone can see the movies, they get the screeners, and then you do your secret balloting by December 31st. You vote for your nominees, it's all in secret. And then in January, you stagger the nominations announcements. You could do multiple a day. And then voting opens for the winners, and everyone votes in secret by, let's say, like January 31st. Just pick a date, whatever. All in secret. And then like you spend February staggering the winners announcements, so no one can copy off of each other. Because I think that way you might actually be able to make your own decisions.
Right. Do you think, who would be in charge of tabulating all of this?
I'll do it.
Okay, so we'll have a Joyce-led group.
Yeah.
Do it. And then last one here, Joyce. And again, you can email us at slugfest@goldderby.com. This is from Matt. Big fan of you and Joyce on the podcast. Just wondering similar to your Oscars playback videos, would you do a video of what you thought the 5 SAG Best Ensemble nominees would have been had they existed pre-1995? It would be interesting to see your thoughts and analysis of how those nominees could have affected the Oscar race at that time. That's a wild concept.
I mean, they didn't have the category at the first SAGs.
No.
It
is funny to think about like how that would have maybe affected things, especially with 5. But
yeah, but it's also like weird because like that award is just for the best cast. It's not best picture. Right. And like it often doesn't line up like SAG Ensemble and best picture at the Oscars.
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, it's an interesting proposition and question. I can't say I've thought about it deeply. Like I have thought about it like, oh, what would the 5 nominees would have been the first year of SAG because they didn't have the category. But I've never gone
what would they have been, Joyce? Let me look at this up. What was the first year of SAG?
The first year of SAG was also Jamie Lee Curtis's first nomination for True Lies, remember?
The 1994, I guess, or 1995?
1990, yeah, the films of 94. So I could say like Forrest Gump.
The Forrest Gump, certainly.
Pulp Fiction.
Ed Wood.
I think like Bullets Over Broadway.
Certainly, that seems like likely.
Like that is a cast.
Yep. So you got Bullets Over Broadway, Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction. The other big nominees were like Quiz Show, Shawshank.
I could see. I mean, yeah, even though that's mostly
a two-hander,
like him and Morgan, but yeah, I mean, there are other. I mean, you know, other people.
Based on the list of nominees, like from that year, I would say like Quiz Show probably would get in. Maybe I would say maybe The River Wild, which is a great ensemble, the Merrill nomination.
Iconic film.
So good.
Kevin Bacon, man. The Client. R.I.P. Brad Renfro.
We did a 94 Oscars playback.
Well, we did all of the 90s.
I know. Interview with a Vampire, big ensemble cast. I'm trying to think of movies with like ensemble casts.
But like SAG was also different back then because it wasn't SAG-AFTRA.
Right.
So like the following year when they introduced the category, the nominees were Apollo 13, which won, Get Shorty, How to Make an American Quilt, Nixon, and Sense and Sensibility.
I mean, big controversy at the time, but what about Natural Born Killers, which is a great ensemble, very deep bench of actors?
I don't think they would have gone for it.
How about Four Weddings and a Funeral?
Yeah, I could see that because that was like a hit.
So Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Bullets Over Broadway, and then a fifth one that could be, I don't know, Interview with the Vampire, Shawshank, Quiz Show. Now I'm just going through 1994 movies.
I think Shawshank could make it.
It is a two-hander, but it is a very good, solid group of actors, like a very good group of supporting actors. So
it's not a two-hander like Green Book.
No. Did Green Book win an Oscar, Joyce?
Oh yeah, didn't you hear?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Interesting organization. We dedicate so much time to thinking about
it. It didn't win SAG though.
No, it was just two of them.
Yeah,
only 2 people in the movie. Joyce, that's it. So again, email us at slugfest@goldderby.com. We'll be back next week to do, let's see, DGA like BAFTA predictions, I guess, DGA predictions, and whatever else.
We'll just really Zapruder the luncheon class photo.
Can't wait to do that. That'll be our lead. It'll open up. I'll hold it. Maybe I'll print it out and hold it up. Take a look at it. All right. Bye, Joyce.